What'd you talk about last week?
I don't know.
Other than me. I know you talked about me.
We always talk about you when you're not here.
Welcome everyone back to an Almost Perfect podcast. Good to have you back. I am John, and we are here this week with our good friend Tom, the Tool Man Tarver.
Glad to be back.
That's not your official nickname, but we were just kind of playing with that before you got on. Tom,
Yeah.
the Tool Man. Are you good with tools, Tom?
Yeah, handing them to somebody when they ask for them.
Okay. And that is our good friend Wade in the Water Lindstrom. How about that one?
I've never heard that before.
So, gentlemen, how was your pandemic Thanksgiving?
Mine was actually great. It was the first time I'd had Thanksgiving dinner with my dad in a long time. He's now in Corpus Christi, and I was surprised to find out that he could actually leave the assisted living facility. They said, sure, he can go home with you. Really? So it was great.
Good.
Mine was very calm and understated. We had ribs. We didn't have turkey.
We didn't have turkey either. We did ham. It's been several years where we haven't really had too much turkey. We smoked ribs a couple years in a row too. So it's not that we're anti-turkey, but just haven't felt like it, I guess. So we should mention Brad's not here. If you're watching, you probably already know that. Brad, he told us anyway. I don't know whether you guys believe him or not, but he's getting dental work done this morning. So
what surprises me is that he would rather be there than here. I mean,
right.
What's that say about us?
That says a lot right there.
Well,
yeah.
Tom, you don't have a whole lot of room to talk.
This is true.
Obviously, yeah. So you guys are less than a colonoscopy. It's just
So yeah, Brad, if you're listening, no hard feelings about you not being here today. So stupid.
As far as you know.
Yeah.
So nothing's really changed in the 2 weeks since the last time I was here 2 weeks ago. So
not at all, sir.
No.
And we do not appreciate you thinking that it would have. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, it was almost perfect when I left.
It's a funny story real quick. I'm just noticing one of my screens is up. Somehow this morning, I actually know how. I was looking at stories, and there was this story about, these bats that carry the COVID, and how there's some other viruses that are related to it that they found in other bats, and I forget where right now off the top of my head. But anyway, so longer story short, I went down a few minutes, probably closer to 15 or 20, watching clips of Cujo. Do you remember Cujo?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I never watched it, but I remember it.
Oh, I watched it as a kid, and oh my god,
I was a rabid fan of that movie.
Oh my goodness! The closest I can come is Old Yeller.
Yeah, that may be your best joke yet.
Boy, you guys.
Anyway, let me get back to my story, guys.
I cannot say the same for you.
I know.
The quality of this podcast has really sunk to new lows.
Right,
and that's saying a lot, Tom. But anyway,
Yeah.
So watching clips, and anyway, I got a story up here, a story that we'll talk about in a second. And then now I've got ads on the side where people are selling me T-shirts with dog faces on it. That is how internet advertising works. So unless you want to see Cujo on your shirt, don't go looking at clips of the old movie. So
see, I got the memo.
What is that? I can't see.
It's a dog.
Oh, okay.
It's a dog, yeah.
Man, that's internet advertising at its best. It even
I know.
comes out of your podcast.
Some guy just showed up at my house a few minutes ago and said, "Wear this."
So speaking of COVID, a few weeks ago, I don't remember, maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, we talked about the Collins Dictionary Word of the Year, which was lockdown. Well, this week I read that the Webster's Dictionary came out with their Word of the Year, and to probably no one's surprise, their Word of the Year for 2020 is pandemic. Probably a word that has been used and overused and overused over and over and over again. You
My
can't
I think
guess,
that the
what
use of that word has really become an epidemic.
well, I'm thinking probably prior to 2020, I never used that word even once.
I don't think I had, maybe, I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
and
So Tom, you're not just gonna acknowledge Wade's joke. You're just gonna leave it there like that.
I've already forgotten what he said. Sorry.
Well, lucky for you, so have I.
Oh yes, now I remember. Never mind.
Never mind. Moving right along. Okay, here's the story I wanted to talk about today. Just man receives racist letter over Black Santa decoration. So the short of it is, there's a family in, where were they? Little Rock, I believe, North Little Rock, and they've been there since 2017, and they have a picture here. Their house, it's got the white lights, going like the little stadium lights going up top of the roof, and then there's joy spelled out in Christmas colors. There's an inflatable Christmas tree, and right in the middle there is an inflatable Santa Claus, which is probably about 7 feet tall. The only thing different that most of us will recognize about this Santa Claus is that he's black, right? And he says, up until this one letter he received, he's got a lot of compliments. I'm going to read part of the letter that they put here on the article that someone wrote anonymously. Don't you love anonymous letters?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I've never, as a pastor, I've never gotten an anonymous
never, right?
letter.
You've never heard like they say anything, whoever they are, right? Anyway, here's part of the letter. You should not try to deceive children into believing that I am a Negro.
Was the letter from Santa?
Yes,
Yes,
yeah.
apparently.
The real Santa. So
real
what do you
Santa.
mean? What do you mean anonymous? We know already who it is.
Yes, sorry. Yes, you're right. That's right. I'm sorry. Yes, forgive me. That's my journalistic integrity going down the drains right there, right? Last sentence said, you being jealous of my race is no excuse for your dishonesty. This should come as no surprise, I guess, right? For the racism is dead crowd. Here's exhibit number 5,212,000,000, I guess, right? That a lot of people still have trouble with race.
Begs the question of what should we do with blue-eyed, blonde-haired baby Jesus in our nativity right now?
Mm-hmm. That's always a good question, right?
Who created these myths?
Yeah.
Well, the first thing, he shouldn't be in there right now because it's Advent. So, I mean, you're jumping the gun.
So,
have you driven around town?
I was going to say, Tom, that is a battle I have conceded to long ago. That I'm just not going to win that battle. It's Advent, people. Just it doesn't work. I can't. I haven't had success. Hopefully, other people have.
I was going to say the rest of the world kind of just does their own thing. They celebrate Jesus anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of, you talking about, the blue-eyed Jesus, my favorite, and I've used this as a paper in seminary. I've used this as a sermon illustration, but my favorite television show is Good Times, the old show.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And one of my favorite episodes is Black Jesus. You ever seen that episode? So this long story.
I read the book in seminary, though.
Did you?
So did you, I bet.
Yes, I did. Yes. We went to the same seminary. We probably did. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, the short of it is the younger brother paints a picture of Jesus, but Jesus is black. And so he wants to put the picture. I'm sorry, the older brother, JJ, paints the picture of Jesus, but he's black. The younger brother, who's kind of activist, militant kind of guy, wants to replace white Jesus that's hanging on the picture with black Jesus that his brother just drew. And the line that just gets me every time is when JJ, the older brother, says, Jesus may have your soul, but mama's gonna have your behind if you don't take that picture down. Because we all know Jesus was white, right? He was European, right? So anyway, so here's
Italian,
what. What's that?
Italian, I think.
Italian, yes, yes, with yeah, and he loves spaghetti. That's good. The reason I thought this article was cool, now that we know Santa's racist, what I loved about it is the neighbors. So the short of it is, the neighbors, they by and large got behind this family, and they started buying inflatable black Santas to put in their yard. And I just thought that was cool because, what you see people do in other times, people start ranting, people start, going crazy at each other. They start, slinging mud at each other, all this stuff that just really doesn't help anything. And to me, this is just one of those like little subtle ways that the rest of the community can tell that family, hey, we're with you, but can also tell whoever was
Santa,
writing in the name of
racist Santa.
Santa. They can tell that person, look, we don't go for that here, right? And it's nothing like over the top. It was nothing like violent. There's nothing. It was really kind of neat, right? That we can show solidarity in that way. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a love your neighbor kind of thing.
Love your neighbor kind of thing. Yeah. And so, and an easy way to do it, right? I mean, now I will say, those things are expensive, man. That's why I haven't bought any things. So, anyway,
even discounted after after Christmas sale
on December 26th, Black Santa goes on discount. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I was gonna say my favorite shopping day of the year is the day after Easter. Head down to Walmart and our HEB and get the discount Easter candy. So
we usually do a Christmas party at the parsonage for the church, and we usually do it. We've done it that way for a long time, sort of after Christmas, but for us it's Christmas because of the season. And I can remember people at first think, oh, thank you, you're getting past the Christmas season, that way it's not so busy. I'm like, no, everything's cheaper, so we're just gonna buy everything. It's a lot of people coming to our house and we're trying to save some money, so everything goes on sale. So anyway, all right, so speaking of loving your neighbor and speaking of pandemic, are you guys on TikTok yet? I think I've asked you that before. I don't know if you
yet.
Yeah.
I'm not on TikTok, and I don't think I'm going to be. Should I be?
I didn't know that. Is TikTok like Instagram?
No.
Meaning Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I've seen TikTok. I have had somebody put me in a TikTok. So
that sounds like you have a good grasp of what it is.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
if you say someone put me in a TikTok, I know everything I need to know about you, Tom.
Okay.
It's a video platform, and I have it, and I don't know. I love how people can be creative. Anyway, this isn't so creative. What I'm about to share is that a nurse was put on leave because she was using her TikTok to brag about not wearing a mask. So she made this video and talks about traveling and talks about going out to eat, talks about going everywhere she goes, and she purposely defies the mask wearing orders. And so she was put on leave by her hospital because they expect everyone to display, respect for trying to take care of each other, right? So I read that, and then this came out of the AP about masks. Hearing trouble more obvious with masks. Apparently, a lot of people are realizing that they have trouble hearing now that they are being required to wear masks because they had gotten used to, without realizing it, reading people's lips in order to hear. Do you guys do that at all?
Well, I will say it definitely is harder to understand people when it's muffled. Yeah. But, I would say in our confirmation class, I remember going, I have no idea what anybody's saying. I mean, we were socially distanced, wearing masks. I mean, and then it was teenagers, which are hard to understand in the first place. Reading their lips was not helpful before the mask. So,
Or ordering from the drive-through. I could tell the person on the other end was wearing a mask, and it didn't help. I do this actually, and I've talked about it before. I'm not ashamed of it, obviously. But Gloria caught me once, and she told me that's weird because what was happening is, like, say, Tom or Wade, you'd be talking, I'd be looking at your lips, but then I'd be sort of trying to mouth what you're saying as well to kind of, I guess, process it. And so you're talking, I'm like, and Gloria told me once, that looks weird. Why do you do that? But I didn't realize I was doing it at the time. So anyway. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting because, these are one of those things we don't think about when, we're all trying to convince people to wear masks, especially nurses who are dealing with people like they are. But anybody else, we don't think about how it's one of those latent effects, right? That who would have thought that people realize that they can't hear as well as they thought they did. But now they do. So let's see. Anything else? More than likely, these are people that had some kind of hearing loss prior to all this starting, but they were adapting. This is a doctor out of University of Texas at Dallas Collier Center. Anyway, I thought it was interesting because you never know what you can learn going through a situation as tough as it is. And, maybe you can look for those moments of inspiration, instruction, or change as you walk through difficult times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guys, calm down. All right, so here's the book I wanted to talk about today. I asked the guys if we could talk about change because everybody likes to talk about change, especially people in church, and that's who we are, and that's who our professions center around. So we want to talk about change in the church, or change period. And the reason it got me thinking about this is, guys, I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know how devastated by the news you are, but you only have until the end of December to buy any more Tab.
Oh, my goodness. I didn't realize that.
Thanks,
John.
Yeah. I have no idea how I'm going to make it.
Yeah. Let's see. I can't not drink Tab if there's no Tab not to drink.
That sounds deeper than it was, right? So anyway, Coca-Cola is discontinuing Tab after 57 years on the market. Were you ever a Tab drinker?
I have had a Tab. It's like, I don't think I've ever taken more than one sip at a time. I mean, here, let me taste that. Nope, that's good. I'm good.
My mom used to drink it all the time. She was trying to lose weight back in the 70s and or keep her weight down, or I'm not sure what, but she drank lots of Tab, and then she ate this diet thing that was unfortunately named AIDS, AIDS.
Oh yeah.
I remember she would eat AIDS and drink Tab, and looking back, that seems like about the nastiest combination you could come up with.
That sounds like a bad country song, man.
Yeah, right.
Well, and I would say Tab, as far as I can remember, is like the first thing that was a diet drink per se. And it's interesting. We say diet drinks in the United States, but they have different names in Europe and Asia because there is a diet, and that's something you need a prescription for if you're doing it medically. And so I forget what Coke Light, I think is what it's called.
So Tab was not the first diet soda. I'm reading some of this from this article I looked at. That honor actually belongs to a beverage called No Cal, developed in 1952. Created a soda for diabetics and people with cardiovascular problems. And so No Cal became popular with dieters. And out of that, from that, introduction to the diet soda industry came Diet Right Cola, which was from Royal Crown. And so what we see is that Coca-Cola and Pepsi were actually kind of behind the ball, right? Having their own diet drink. And that's something else I learned. If Coke comes out with a diet drink, maybe you call it Diet Coke, but they didn't do that initially because they felt like that would be bad for their brand. And so that's where part of where Tab comes from. They didn't want to call it Diet Coke. They called it Tab, so it wouldn't have this sort of negative association with their image of Coke, which again, this is a large conversation I want to have, but so Coke had to change their minds at some point, right, about what they felt about a diet soda, because Diet Coke eventually does come out, right? And then now we know that Tab is going away. They had to make a decision to stop, producing Tab, and no matter how much of a, I don't know how popular it was. Apparently, I guess you can guess it wasn't that popular anymore. But so this idea about change, and yesterday, and first Sunday of Advent, on Sunday past, I talked about change. We talked about some of the things in the world that we want to be changed, right? That Advent is just a reminder of why we need Christmas, right? And why did we need Christ to come? There's a lot in the world that needs to be changed, and that's what Christ comes to bring. The kingdom of God brings change. And so what I know, and what I'm sure Tom and Wade know, and probably many people who are listening, is that change is hard. and change in the church sometimes feels impossible. And so maybe just having a little conversation together about, how do we identify when change is necessary? Maybe even how do we go about identifying the right kinds of change? And then how do we, make change happen? What is your experience, Tom or Wade, with change in church in particular?
One of the things is, is change happens. I mean, it's not it's not that you have to create momentum for change. You just what has to happen is always is you've got to create a better picture, a better future, and certainly using the word pandemic. The pandemic has brought about change, and one of the things is this awareness that the things that we are now doing, the technological changes that we've made within the context of worship and the church, and I know at Asbury we've had several huge leaps and improvements in what we're doing, from having a online service that people watched, but they tuned out because the sound was awful, or it blanked out, or whatever. And I even had a conversation recently, I think last week, with somebody who said, well, I started watching it, but I haven't watched it in like 4 weeks. And I said, oh, then you watched it before our improvements. I said, I'd recommend that you do that. But this period that we're currently living in, the whole world is living in, has created, has forced us to change. And there are those who are thrilled with it and those who are not. And it's kind of like, I can't wait until we get back to the way things were. But anyway, there's my little rant. I'll let you take over, Wade.
I think, I mean, sometimes we have to change on a dime, like we've had to do with some of this pandemic stuff. And then, there's other sort of more calculated changes that we have to make, either in our personal life or our business life, or in my experience, it's probably been mostly with church life. But I think it all starts with, why.
Oh yeah.
Why do we need to change? What is it that isn't happening, that that we're not getting the results that we expect. Why do we, what's the why for the change? And then, we can begin to say, okay, well, if begin to prioritize what it is that is, like for a church, what's the mission? What's the vision? Where are we headed? Are we going in a direction? And if we're going in that direction, what do we need to add in? And what do we need to subtract? And why are we doing what we're doing? And does it feed the mission? And I think it's the same way in your own life. Whatever it is that you need to change. If you need to lose a few pounds, you probably need to look at how you got where you were and where you're going to go, and are you willing to make those sacrifices and changes to make things happen. So I think even with this pandemic stuff, the stuff that we one day we were doing what we were doing, and the next day we were in front of video cameras and trying to figure it out. And you've said you've had leaps in sort of technological changes, and probably philosophically, I would guess too. And we've had the same experience. But a time is coming, and may have already come for some of us, where we got to go, what does this mean for ever?
Yeah.
Because I think I'm going to guess most of us agree that probably we didn't have a very effective online presence prior to being forced to have one, because we couldn't meet publicly. And the very fact that the three of us are sitting here on a podcast, we weren't doing this a year ago. Why are we doing this now?
Yeah.
And I think there's at least a piece of that was, if I'm reading the room right, that we felt like we needed to connect together as people, and to sort of connect our communities together in this way. And so what does that mean for the future? And
none of us thought we were going to get rich by doing this.
Well, that's a given, isn't it? Are you getting paid for this? Is that what you're telling me?
We'll talk later. No.
You're working on the commercial aspect.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you guys talked about like changes in how ministry happens, and I think that's totally appropriate, and that's a big part of what we do, because I mean that's we're put in charge of the church, the order of the church, right? And that falls in line with ministry and what we do. What about like Wade? You kind of touched on it real briefly about personal change. How do you identify change that needs to be made in either in the way you live out your faith or in something else that's happening? How do you go about identifying something that needs to be changed?
Can I give you a personal example?
If you want to. It's your podcast that you're making millions of dollars off of, whatever, man.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, this is proprietary content then. About I don't know, maybe 17 years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and so almost immediately I was put on medication for that. I was overweight a little bit, and through the years, I gained weight, didn't take great care of myself all the time, and pretty soon I was on more than one diabetic medicine, and then pretty soon I was on more than a few diabetic medicines, and then about September of last year, I was on 7 diabetic medicines.
Okay. And
I was 303 pounds, and it took me 16 years to figure out that I needed to make some really radical changes, and so I there's probably a million reasons for that, and I could go into those, but I won't. But one of my doctors had been recommending for a while that I consider surgery, weight loss surgery. And that takes preparation. And so I had to change the way that I was eating. I had to lose some weight ahead of surgery so that they would know that I was committed, and so that I would be a better candidate for surgery. And about a week before surgery, they took me off all my diabetes medicines except for one. And because I'd lost about 30 pounds, And to date, I am about I've lost a little less than 80 pounds. I had lost 80 pounds, but then Thanksgiving happened. And so I actually had to get back on my bicycle today and do some, make some recommitments to changes. But I think a lot of times you make changes when you're either gonna have some outcomes that aren't appealing to you, like high blood pressure, lots of medicine, eventual death.
That'll do
or
it.
or you're about to get, you're not going to get something that you want. So whether that is a promotion at your job or things financial or relationships, sometimes you got to take a look at your relationships and go, this isn't the relationship, it isn't going the way I want it to do. So what changes do I need to make, or what changes do we need to make that relationship work the way it's supposed to work? And so I guess that's what I would say. I think that's the summary would be, when I'm about to get something that I don't want, or I'm not going to get something that I want. Those are usually two big motivators for change.
And you kind of earlier touched on something, and that I want to kind of highlight is there is change that I have control over. For example, I do have some control over my weight. I may choose to do something that, and in this particular case, the pandemic created an environment that was conducive for me losing 20 pounds, which has been a significant change for me. But it's a choice I actually have control over. And then there's other things like a worldwide pandemic, which is something I have no control over. I have no control over how many people get sick or how many people die. I have some control over my choices, but other people's choices and the continued spread of the coronavirus, I have no control over that. And somewhere in the midst of that, it comes back to, as a church, we've had no control over the fact that the laws have restricted what we do and all of that, but we've had all kinds of control over how we respond to the isolation and the social aspect, and responding to the need out there that people still need to connect. For us, we swam. I don't know whether you would say against the stream or we swam with the flow, but our desire to connect with other pastors has brought us to this place where we're having this conversation in the first place. And as you alluded to earlier, Wade, is this wasn't even on our radar a year ago. It wasn't, and now it's like, even if everything settles out and we can actually go outside without a mask and shake a hand of a stranger, will that mean we stop doing this? No, because there's something about this that we realized that was an element that was always available or has been available for years, but now we're going, something I've missed that I didn't even know I was missing. And so change has brought about this awareness of possibilities. And that's one thing, like I said, and change is inevitable. We all know that. The things, babies grow into toddlers who grow into, eventually teenagers who grow to adults. If all things continue along the normal line of growth, and all along that way, it's change that just happens naturally, normally. But then then we come back to, in the midst of that, then we begin to make choices as to what am I going to do with my future? Which school am I going to go to, or will I go to school after I have to go to school? And all of those things begin to, and I have no idea where I'm going with this, so I'll just stop right there. I just realize is as I'm saying some things that are not true, but there could be no end of that conversation talking about change.
Well, I think to your point, I've had people tell me that, through all of this, being isolated with your family primarily has given chance for people to spend more time together as family that they weren't taking before, or actually resting as a family, and kind of slowing down. I've had people tell me that through the pandemic, they've learned to pray more, or they started reading the Bible more. So, to your point, that the pandemic brought a change, which we couldn't control. Out of that, there were changes that we could make, that we decided to, that 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 we hope to carry. Right? I hope families will still make that time for each other. I hope people will still read scripture more and pray more, because that's a change that was made within them as a result of the pandemic. And of course, the way you guys have brought it out today is everything you can say about recognizing a need for change in our personal lives. We can also, that has some relation to how we can recognize change that needs to happen in the context of ministry. So one of the things we talked about on Sunday is, looking around at the needs of our community. Now I feel like it needs to change that people around my church don't have anywhere to sleep at night, right? That it needs to change that there are children who don't have families to call their own, right? There are changes like that need to happen, that we have no choice but to rely on the power of God. And so if we're going to do that, we need to change the way we do some things as well, because what we were doing before wasn't always helpful to help us do that. If we talk about, the younger generations not being a part of church anymore, or going away from faith, well, is that something that we want God to change? Well, then maybe we need to change how we approach the ministry with those people, right? So it's the same conversation. What makes all that? So, I mean, we say, yeah, we want those things to happen. We recognize that they're important, but what makes coming to that point of change so difficult for us, gentlemen? Wade, using your personal example, you said it took you 16 years, right? I mean, why does it take us so long sometimes to do these things that we know are good, are necessary?
Well, I think I think there's an aspect of denial. Um, if I don't take a close look at that, then it's not as big a problem. Some of it is I want what I want when I want it, and that's the way I'm going to roll. And then I think there's some fear in that as well. What am I going to lose if I change? What is it that I'm getting from whatever it is that I may need to change? And I find that really shows up big time in organizational change. Like, we are getting really poor results from what we're doing, but we don't want to change what we're doing. So what is it that we're getting from what we're doing that doesn't allow us to see the need for change? There is some sort of, with all of our behavior, especially the behavior that we like, that we cling to, there is a payoff to us in some way, that we are getting something. And I think it's really important to try to identify what that is as an organization and as a person. And then you got to, one of the things that I started doing at the pandemic, and you got to understand that this is complete. I'm like the most disorganized person in the world. And that hasn't changed too terribly much. And my desk at church, about once a quarter, I clean it off, and somebody from church walks in and goes, "What happened?" what I realized early in the pandemic, especially because I was working at home, that it was real easy to kind of take on all the roles that I was playing at once, all day, all night. I could work and then I could stop and play. There wasn't a start and a stop point, right, for anything. And so I've got two whiteboards here. One of them is labeled home, and one of them is labeled work. And I keep Sunday through Saturday list of things that I need to focus on. And the only thing that goes on these boards are things that have to happen. If it's stuff that, if I need to make a call or something that is, I can put that off. But what has to happen, and that for me, that flows from kind of a personal motto that I didn't invent, but I adopted, which, and you guys have heard probably a million times, is do the next right thing. So if I'm sitting here and I am completely covered up in my work and I need a break, I'll go look at the home board and say, what's the next right thing to do to step away from work and do home? And there's something there that I can go do. And and then at work, sometimes I'll look at my list and I'll go, there's 10 things on my list for today, but really there's 4 things that absolutely have to happen. So I'm going to move those other 6 to other days. So for me, it's just been about becoming more intentional. I won't say more organized because I don't know that I've made.
You don't want to put that kind of stress on yourself, man.
Exactly. But definitely more organized. And I've done a funny thing. These are whiteboards with dry erase markers. I also bought. Do you guys know wet erase markers? Do you know that there are wet erase markers? Mm-mm. They go on a dry erase board, but you can only take the stuff off with water. So if you accidentally try to rub it off with your thumb, it won't work. And so there are some things that stay on the board. I've got a category over here. It's Sunday through Saturday, and then next to that there's a daily category. I don't have to put the things I do daily on there, but I do a check mark every day by those daily things. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things on the daily. And I would say on a daily basis, I probably normally check off 4 to 5 of those things. And some of it's as simple as take your medicine. Because I'll forget, I'm here all,
take your medicine, Wade, please.
Yeah, take your medicine and, and write down what you ate. That's been a big part of my food journey. One of them that's up here, and it's probably the one that gets the least amount of attention, but I'd say it gets attention 4 or 5 times a week, and that's take a nap. Take a nap. And it doesn't have to be a 2-hour nap. It has, 15, 20, 30 minutes. It's fine. So I think you have to be intentional about change. You can't just talk about it. There has to be some defined action that everybody agrees on. And when it's your personal change that you agree on, but also, if it's in your church, your organization, or your family, we all have to agree that this is where we're headed. And these are some of the steps that we're going to have to take. And you got to put deadlines on those things in most cases.
So, Tom, do you think the people that made dry erase markers were like, no, we're not going to change to wet erase markers? That's not us.
I discovered them quite by accident, but when I discovered them, it was like, boom, oh yeah.
That's great. Tom, what would you say? What makes it hard to change or to want to change?
Well, it really comes down to what's comfortable and familiar. It's easier to go that direction. And I know I'm the kind of person where you give me more choices, the more I'm stuck in what what is familiar, what's routine, and so those are the things that I will stick to. And it kind of comes back to, Wade, you were talking about with churches. With churches, it's just like with an individual when, when we know there needs to be a change, but we're uncertain as to what the change needs to be and why we need to change. Then we'll stick to what we already have done and what we know, because it may not be effective for everyone. It may not be reaching anyone, but it's what I'm familiar with. It's what I'm comfortable with, and so I'm unwilling to make the changes as an individual or as a church, and for me, I think about, the thing that I'm very aware of is I'm easily distracted by lots of things, Netflix, taking care of things in the backyard. It can be anything, and because of that, I don't use the reflection time to think a little deeper and a little farther, or further down the road. And so I don't make those changes. And so it's honestly, it's comfort and distractions that keep me personally from making changes that I need to make.
So change is inevitable, Tom says, and change should be intentional, Wade says. Does that sound right?
Yep.
So we just figured out all of church ministry in the span of 45 minutes. You all can thank us later. Send in your payments to Wade's account because that is what he is expecting.
Well, time out for just 1 second.
Yeah.
Because I've got a bone to pick with you.
Uh-oh.
Do you have merch on right now?
Oh, yes, I kind of do. Check that out.
Yeah, I didn't even know we had merch. So
we technically we don't. We don't, but we're closer and closer than we were.
And you're going to send your checks to me. He's got the merch.
I have homemade merch on right now. You are very correct.
Yeah.
So
I never noticed that. I'm glad you pointed that out, Wade. Wading in the water, Wade.
Thing you have to do for Tom. You see that, Tom?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So change is inevitable.
Those are available on Amazon now, yeah?
Yeah, right. So change is inevitable. It should be intentional if we're going to make the most out of what we endure and go through. And if we're going to do what God wants us to do, if we're going to be faithful, we need one of our colleagues, I remember being very green in ministry. I don't even think I was under appointment and going to one of those equipping the saints kind of things. And one of our colleagues said, the only time you shouldn't expect change is when you put $1 in the vending machine, right? Otherwise, change is coming. Be ready for it. And, in terms of ministry and personal growth, do it on purpose so that, you can make the most of what you go through. So, gentlemen, that's a good conversation. I think it's an important one because things are changing. Things will always change. And, what are we going to do? We're going to argue against it and, be left behind. That's not what we want to do. So I appreciate your input. Any final words?
Be in charge of the change.
Ooh, okay. You sermon writer, you. That's what that sounds like.
Do the next right thing.
All right. Very good. All right, gentlemen, I appreciate your time and your input. Everyone else, thanks for listening. Glad you could be a part of it. I'm sure you agree with me that the guys were almost perfect today. So good job, you guys. If you are listening, get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. Let us know if there's something you want us to talk about to try to find a Christ-like response to. We'll tell you when the merchandise is able and available for you to find. Otherwise, it's just for us. Actually, it's just for me
it's
right
just
now.
For John.
Let's be honest.
You're going to have to change that attitude.
I'll change my attitude. Very good. All right. So until next week, till we have a chance to meet together, have a great rest of the week. Guys, I appreciate your time. God be with you.
And with you.